All right. Welcome to this week's live office hours. And as everybody's jumping in, just a quick reminder, there is really no format here. We're just here to answer any questions you have, geek out with you guys, and make it a super valuable, impactful hour every single week. Casey, how's it going?
Good. Things are going well. Yeah, kind of not quite in the Q4 prep phase just yet, but kind of getting closer to that. I know a lot of folks are trying to, fine tune some repricing strategies or try a
Yep.
couple different methods of repricing before we kind of get into that time of the year where you're really, focused more on stocking up on inventory, and then, the testing you're doing now will kind of inform how you're going to reprice in Q4. So yeah, kind of a lot of interesting methods people are trying, or different ways to kind of find some footing in the new landscape. I know there's been a lot of changes in
Yeah.
Amazon, some people shifting to Walmart. So yeah, kind of a lot of activity going on.
Yeah, we're kind of in this limbo stage is what I'm going to call it, right? It's like the calm before the storm where you don't need to get dialed in yet, but it's coming. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of sellers just intuitively know this and they're kind of just relaxing a little bit, kind of taking a breather before things kick off and go crazy.
Yeah.
Obviously we have a while till Q4, but still like you're kind of getting very close to that period of time where you have to start prepping, you have to start figuring things out, and making sure that you're getting the most out of the opportunity that's coming our way.
Yeah.
Now, I know you mentioned before we kind of jumped in here, you had some stuff you kind of wanted to share with everyone as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly share my screen. I'll use our own account as just an example here. Um, but what I wanted to share was just a couple, quick tips on better ways to manage, your own account, just to kind of speed things up in terms of, the day-to-day time that you need to spend within Aura. So I'm just going to review kind of some of the more common filters, or more actionable filters, if you will. Firstly, if you are repricing on Amazon and Walmart, I know I've reviewed this before, but you can look at just your Amazon listings by sorting by that specific marketplace. Or if you want to just look at those Walmart listings, you can select channel and select your specific Walmart channel. We don't currently have a Walmart account connected, so there's no option showing there, but that'll be the best way to kind of break out those listings into each individual marketplace. In terms of things to look out for, maybe some actions that may be needed on your listings to make sure that repricing is happening as you'd like, I always recommend checking out this listing alert feature, or a filter rather. There's a couple different options you can take advantage of in here. Specifically, if you have listings without a minimum price or a cost entered, you can use those options just to make sure that you have all those fields properly filled out. Obviously, a minimum price is required in order for Aura to issue pricing updates, just establishing a floor so Aura doesn't price you too low. Costs are optional, but if you're using them to set prices automatically, you will want to make sure you have your costs entered in there. And just a reminder that Aura will automatically take care of those referral and fulfillment fees, but any additional cost you take on to sell an item, whether that's prep fees, storage fees, maybe any inbound shipping fees you take on, you'll also want to bake that into your costs there. But really the most impactful filter and quickest way to see perhaps maybe why some listings may be stale or not repricing as much as you'd like is going to be this minimum price above buy box. This will just let you know that, hey, your set min price is above the current buy box winning price. That's going to limit Aura's ability to make you competitive on that listing. So I always recommend lowering that min to bring the buy box within your set min and max range, just to maintain healthy sales velocity. Obviously, if you want to make sure that you stay profitable or don't want to lower that min, you can just wait out that competition until they sell out. Hopefully that buy box rotates to you after that. And then I will also just link in the chat kind of our full breakdown of the filters that we have available. You can obviously check on, listings that may be assigned to a specific strategy, but I also always recommend looking at listings that you have Hyperdrive active on. There's different Hyperdrive allotments depending on the specific plan you have, but always recommend using all of your Hyperdrive credits that are available to you. That just increases the speed at which you're able to submit pricing updates and react to competitive offers. So there's really no downside in using Hyperdrive. So this will be the quickest way to kind of check on listings that have Hyperdrive active, making sure that you're using all of the credits that are available to you.
Nice. Awesome. One thing I want to bring back up, because in a lot of the conversations at the conferences, it was, how can I speed up my workflow? How can I, be more efficient basically in the application? We wrote a blog post a while ago, but I want to bring it back up because I feel like we haven't touched this in a hot minute.
Sure.
And I'll share a link actually of this in the chat here so everybody has it. There's 3 things you can do to basically automate 90% of your account in Aura. First one is really just getting your costs in there. We are going to want those to automatically set min values, super critical. So we've got 4 integrations. You pick one that you're already using, or, if you're not using any of the tools, maybe consider that. You enable the integration and you're off and running, which is fantastic. That alone saves you a ton of time, to be honest. And then the second step here is being able to tee up new listings without you having to be in the loop. So we talk a lot about like humans in the loop and stuff like that. When we're talking automation, we want humans out of the loop as much as possible. And what this workflow allows us to do is say, well, whenever a new listing is imported into your account, what should I do? Well, if we've already imported your costs because of the step 1 integrations, now what we're going to do is tell the workflow to set a starting strategy and enable repricing. Well, if your strategy is setting your min values based on something like profit margin or ROI, we have your costs, we have the listing fees, you have a min value. So this is so important because if you check your repricing software once a week, but you're shipping in a lot of things, those could get checked in and just be sitting there for a week. And you just didn't really realize it, right? And so you wasted a week of repricing, so to speak. And so what this allows us to do is say, well, it doesn't matter if this is at midnight, 3 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, does not matter. This is going to run whenever a new listing comes in, even if it's not checked in yet. We are teeing this up so that when it does become available, we can immediately kick off repricing and do what you want us to do. That's super important. And then the last one here, which we talk a lot about lately, because it's kind of the framework we're trying to get people to understand repricing through, is automating the actual life cycle of your products. So we talk a lot about this age of inventory kind of philosophy, right? Where a lot of sellers will hold inventory too long when they didn't need to. Now, is there times when you should hold inventory for a longer period of time? Yes, those are sometimes the case, but on average, we don't really see that. If you're a long-term investor, long-term holder, you're doing things like Legos where you're going to hold that for 3 to 6 months, that's a different story. What we're talking about here is volume. And so what we want to be able to do is say, okay, well, I want to behave a certain type of way depending on how long I've held this inventory. And I want that to change automatically without me being in the loop. Because what happens, and I love asking this question when I do live calls with groups, can you think of one SKU that you should have dealt with a month or 3 months ago that you haven't? You should, you need to move it, you just don't want to deal with it. Well, most people can think of 5 to 10. But why is that? It's an emotional problem. So I studied finance. I got my bachelor's degree in finance. My favorite class was behavioral finance. It was fantastic. It really opened my eyes to a lot of fallacies and biases and things of that nature. And turns out a lot of what we do as sellers has those problems. And so we end up holding something, even though we know it was a bad purchase, but we're like, we'll wait. Why are you waiting? When are you waiting? How long are you waiting? All these different things need to be procedural, not just I'll wait till when. What's your criteria for when you go from conservative to aggressive to I need to liquidate this now? And instead of relying on your human emotions to make that decision, which by the way, you will not make that correctly most of the time, we can basically give that over to software, to code and say, okay, this is how I want it done. You just do it for me. And so if we go back to those, 5 to 10 SKUs that you should have dealt with 1 to 3 months ago, what if they were already dealt with and you didn't have to deal with it yourself? But it was dealt with in the way that you instructed, the way that you wanted. And that's what this age of inventory workflow is doing. And we break out how to basically build this. So all we're doing is we're saying once an hour, every day of the week, run this. And what we're saying is, well, listen, if I have more than 0 units, basically, so I have 1 or more units in a certain time block, I want to assign a certain strategy. And so the way this ends up looking, and actually, let's do this. We're going to go to the help docs here, and I'm going to show you exactly what this looks like once it's completed. What it ends up looking like is this times 3. So all we're doing is we're basically just saying, listen, If my age of inventory, my oldest age of inventory is between 0 and 30 days, I want to assign my starting strategy. In a lot of cases, that's Maven. However, if my oldest age of inventory is between 31 and 60 days, I might switch over to a slightly more aggressive strategy targeting the buy box directly. I may match, I may reprice by a penny below. At minimum, that's what I'm doing. And then if we're 61 days or older, then we're going to switch to a liquidation strategy. And what's nice about the way we build these is, let's say that changes. Let's say you have 20 units in day 0 to 30, but you've also got 20 units in 90 plus. Well, based on that definition, you're going to be in a liquidation strategy state. So we're going to move those old inventory. Once that 20 units is gone, now we're left with the 0 to 30 days. Now we're going to revert within the next hour to our Maven more conservative strategy. So this is how we're able to basically say, okay, well, I'm going to tell you when I want to become aggressive, when I don't want to become aggressive, and you just do that for me. And now I'm out of the loop. At any point, I can change any of the settings. I can do whatever I want. If you want to simplify this and say, well, if it's 0 through 60, use Maven. After 61 plus, liquidate. Sure, totally up to you. It's configurable that way. But what's nice about this, again, is these are 3 things, just 3 things that if you were to do, you would automate 90% of your Aura account. And think about how much time that frees up and how you're being able to redeploy that time into more profitable things like buying more inventory and getting better at sourcing, or hiring a team, interviewing people, recruiting, all these different things. It's so funny how sellers get stuck. I talk to a lot of sellers and they're like, hey, I'm kind of just stuck at this one level of sales. I can't seem to break past it. And when you dive deep, you realize they actually have a good sourcing system, but they're limited on time. And when you dive deep into how they're spending their time, a lot of it is not very effective time. You know, they're tweaking these little things here and there. It's like, oh, cool, I got 1% more margin. I'm like, yeah, but you're working for pennies. Like that one thing that took you 4 hours made you an extra $30. Cool. I mean, not really worth your time. So they get stuck in this limbo state is what I'm going to call it, where you think that scaling is going to be tweaking things. It's not tweaking things. It's scaling, actually scaling. And by that, I mean, it's buying more inventory. So spending more money and figuring out how to do that. A lot of times that's going to be, you know, making good use of your time, but also sometimes you're going to have to slow down to speed up. And what I mean by that is you might need to start building a team. And yes, you will slow down when you start to build a team. You have to hire people, you have to onboard them, all that stuff, get them up to speed. That could take 1 to 2 months in a lot of cases. So 1 to 2 months, you're like, well, you know, I started that process, things started to slow down. Now I don't have as much time as I previously did. That's true, but it's a short-term gain, or I'm sorry, it's a short-term pullback that's now going to pole vault you forward. In flow science, I'm going to nerd out here for a second. This is a similar concept that happens. When you talk about deploying leverage, any form of leverage, could be technology, could be capital, could be people, whatever. The short term of when you are implementing that new form of leverage, you will have a slowdown in the thing that you're doing, right? So if what's a good example here? I recently got into riding motorcycles. Okay, let's say, you know, I've done my crash course, you know, I know the basics, but now I want to go up to a new level of technique. I'm not going to do that fast. I'm going to do that slowly, and then I'll be able to do it fast. That's not a great example. I'm trying to think of a great example. We're doing this off the dome right now, Casey. But I guess what my point is, like, a lot of sellers start to feel that pullback, freak out, and they stop doing that, not realizing they were actually making really good progress in the thing that would 2x, 3x their growth rate. And instead, they hold themselves back because they feel like they're doing more work by spinning their wheels over here. And the moment they switched over to try and deploy some leverage, things slowed down a little bit and they freaked out. You have to lean into that and understand, okay, things are going to slow down as I'm implementing these systems, processes, people, whatever, then things will speed back up.
Yeah.
I need a better analogy for that.
I'm trying to think. Of course, my brain goes to movies. If anyone's seen the Simpsons movie, he tries to win a car and he's in a circular dome and he has a motorcycle and you're supposed to ride it all the way around upside down. And he gets halfway up and he gets scared and he lets go of the acceleration and he crashes. And that's when Bart goes, no, you need to accelerate more at that point so you can continue to accelerate through. he does that, and then he wins. That's the best example I could think of.
Yeah, it's great.
Shout out
That's a good one.
movie, but
I recently saw the Dome of Death or whatever they call it in person for the first time at a circus. It was the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like in a lot of my life when I've sat down to implement automations, it took a lot of time. There's this what's it KYX or one of the comic things that's like really prevalent with techies. There was a chart basically of when you should automate something, when you should not. And it was a cool matrix because it was like, all right, how long is it going to take you? And how much time do you think it's going to give you back? And how recurring is this thing? And it will let you know, cool, like you do this once a year, probably not worth any time to automate this. It's once a year. You do it daily. Now you might be willing to spend 20 hours to automate that thing, because if you look at it on a long enough time horizon, it makes a lot of sense. There's a positive ROI there. But you are investing into the growth, right? If we never hired anybody at Aura, we would not be able to sustain and keep growing the way we are. It's just not possible. But you slow down when you do that, right? Like when we hire people, we have to pause what we're doing, find the right people, interview a bunch of people, go through a bunch of resumes, like onboard, all that stuff. But what's funny is you get better every single time you do it, right? And so like, there's been times where, we go to the market to hire somebody and there's nobody that really stands out. We're not going to hire anybody in that pool. Just nobody's good enough, unfortunately. Was it a waste of time? I don't think so, because we honed the process a little bit more. So you're going to go through those phases, but it's so interesting how when I talk to sellers that want to grow, feel they're hitting a ceiling, and we dive into this kind of stuff, a lot of them go, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to manage people. Well, listen, you're going to have to work with people. You're going to have to, your job as a business owner, as a founder, is to build those skills, is to learn how to manage people, learn how to hire people. Like if you look at founders, especially in like tech, the best thing, there's really only two things that a founder really does when they're going to a growth phase: recruiting and raising money, assuming they're VC backed. That's it. Like your job is to get the right people on the bus in the right seat. So at a certain point, you're not fiddling and tweaking things. No, you're hiring people, you're building teams. So who you are, your identity, and the skill sets that you have to cultivate over time necessarily has to change if you want the business to change. Otherwise, you become the bottleneck. And a lot of people don't want to hear that, which I totally understand. There's been times when I've been a bottleneck for Aura, straight up, because I didn't have the skill set. I'm like, cool, I need to go get that, right? Like, as a business owner, as a founder, your job is to go 0 to 80% on any skill as fast as possible, and then prove it and say, oh, cool, now we need to hire somebody on this. Easier said than done, obviously. Like, hiring people is not an easy thing to do. I wish it was easier. It takes a lot of time. But if you're afraid of building a team, if you're like, oh, I've never wanted to manage people, you got to get over that fear. Because honestly, like, there's been days I've told you and Finn this, where I'm like, you guys are jumping into meetings without me now. I'm like, dang, that's kind of cool. Like, you guys are solving problems without me in the loop. And, I say this all the time, like we hire people for the brain, not for the role or the task, because I do want that to evolve. And if you're just doing what I tell you to do, then like, what's the point, right? So when you start to experience that, I remember when we first started to hire, I was kind of daunted by it because I've never managed people either. I'm like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. But you figure it out, you make some mistakes, you learn. And eventually you start to see the fruits of that investment, and you're like, wow, this is kind of cool. Now it exists outside of me. And you just have to get through those growing pains, though. So if you feel like you're stuck, if you feel like you're hitting your ceiling and you just don't know how to break through, look at different forms of leverage. Look at technology, right? Like, look what you can automate to free up a lot of your time. And that could be as simple as an autoresponder, it's something, right? Like, I used to create recurring tasks for myself using Zapier and Todoist. It's like, every day, just create this sucker for me. I know I need to get it done. I don't want to, but like, just remind me of it. That's a little form of automation, but it helped hold me accountable so I didn't have to remember everything. Or it could be building your team, right? If you've got a really solid playbook for sourcing and things like that, and you could actually teach another human to do it and do it well, why wouldn't you hire somebody? Why wouldn't you build out a team? So a lot of things to think about. We went on a random tangent here. I'm glad we did because that's a deep-seated one, I think. See, Sarah. Hey, Dylan, curious about how you're composing AI agents. Got an example from Aura or something, or automating sourcing with Kiva API. What tools / frameworks are you using? Okay, big question here. I use Lindy quite a lot for stuff like this. Funny enough, I am not the guy. I remember I got introduced to somebody who's like a hardcore automation guy. We talked, we geeked out. It was fun. It's like, hey, I got this private group of guys where this is all we do. But we don't really bring people in, but like, this would be cool if you came on, but like, would you be willing to like basically present your wildest thing? And I was like, no, I don't do crazy wild complexity. I'm more of a fan of elimination first. I think a lot of people automate things that you should just not be doing, period, because it holds no value. So funny enough, I do automate a lot, but not super crazy things that I see other people doing because I just don't have the need for it, you know? So I see what's possible, but you know, I'm like, I don't have the need. Lindy.ai has been phenomenal. There's also Gumloop. N8N is also another one that a lot of people are using right now. I've not played with N8N in a hot minute since they added AI, but I've been hearing amazing things with it. So it's on my list to kind of experiment with. I have not played around with Keepa API data. There's a lot more that has to be done there. I honestly, I think what would make the most sense is to train a model on Keepa data and then have the weights changed for that outcome. I don't think you're just going to be sending, you know, ChatGPT like, hey, here's a Keepa data. Like, what should I do here? It's not going to know. But I think there is an opportunity to do that, but that's going to require a software engineer an ML engineer to actually do that. So larger project. Tools and frameworks. I already mentioned, you know, a few tools. There's Crew.ai, which is good. That's like a coding framework for agents. It's okay. Not my favorite, to be honest. I played a lot with it in the early stages, but that's really for developers. If you're thinking like no code kind of tooling, the ones I mentioned are going to be a good fit for you. What else? In terms of automating sourcing, I do play with every browser agent that comes on the market, and I have a default prompt I give it to see if it can profitably source a product for Amazon. I've yet to see one succeed. I've seen it get 60, maybe 70% of the way there and have some problems. There are solutions to that. So one of the problems is I was having it use Amazon's FBA calculators, the page, to be able to calculate profitability. It was just the easiest thing I could think of. It has a lot of issues doing that for some reason. Now, could you hook that up to an API and say, hey, do a tool call and then like actually run the API? Yes, you could. I'm just not going to build that, to be honest. This is more like for my own internal knowledge of like, where are we at right now? Because the moment you say you have to code this, I go, the average seller is not going to do that. So I'm going to it from the lens of, let's assume I cannot code. Can it complete this task for me? Right now, again, we're probably 70% of the way there, being optimistic. I think in the next 6 to 12 months, we'll probably close that gap relatively fast. It's still going to require very clear prompting. Prompting matters. It's gotten better. You know, they can steer themselves a little bit better, but still you have to over communicate. You have to be incredibly clear. If you're doing a multi-sequence thing, you need to say, listen, this is step 1, this is step 2, this is step 3. Like you have to give so much context and so much information, which is fine, but that creates some friction. So if I've built that out and it works, that's great, but now I need to scale it. And it's not a prompt that says, hey, go find me 50 profitable products on Amazon. Like that's not how this works, right? Like it's a very different world than what that enables that we're currently in. So we'll get there once we get true agents, and we're very, very close. I'm seeing a lot of cool stuff. I'm playing with a lot of things right now where I think we could get there faster than I thought. But we'll see. We'll definitely see. There's some stuff right now where you could say, hey, listen, once a day, go to these URLs and run this kind of equation or whatever, and like it'll do that pretty well. That's a solved problem, but this whole go into the wild and find me things, we're just not there yet. So it still needs a little too much direction where, again, I could say, listen, go find this type of product on Vitacost.com and like, only return a list if you find 10 that meet this criteria. It might be able to do that. The problem though is it starts to run into a context window problem where that task actually takes a computer much longer right now to complete, that it just stops working. So for now, keep working with VAs and other people to help you source, keep working with humans, but clarify your process, clarify your SOPs, make them hyper effective, hyper efficient. Eventually, those can turn into prompts and you will be able to say, here's the SOP, now you go and do it for me. We're just not there yet. So there's a lot of work I think sellers should be doing prior to these things being possible because they are coming. And what you don't want to have happen is it gets launched tomorrow and you're like, cool, how do I do this? And you're sitting down with a blank page. Would you rather start with a really optimized process that you could hand over to an agent that could just do it, one shot? Yeah, of course you want to be that person. So right now, a lot of the advice is have as much documentation as you can, have as much data as you can, because it will increase in value. And by increase in value, I mean, it becomes executable. It becomes practical now. If I give you all your data for your Amazon account, what are you going to do with it? You're probably just going to be like, mess around in Excel a little bit, but I don't know. So what's the effective value of your data if you can't practically utilize it? Zero, right? But if that changes, everything changes. So what happens when it does become practical? So now the value goes up. So a lot of sellers have not been as, a lot of sellers are data driven, guaranteed, right? You're using Keepa to make buying decisions, all that stuff. But there's still a wealth of data that is just untapped that already exists. We just don't have the time capacity, the intellectual capacity. And by intellectual capacity, not that people are incapable of it, but you have so much going on, more so mental capacity, right? You don't really know if there's something in that data that would fundamentally benefit you and your decisions in the business. So because there's this big unknown, why waste the time? I just know if I buy more inventory, I'll be okay. If you hand that over to an agent and just say, hey, go through everything and find insights that would practically help me, and you can go do another task while that's kicking off for, another, 5 hours of work that it's just doing in the background. Okay. It's a different story. I'm going to pause there.
Yeah. Just before we jump into some more questions, I just wanted to jump back to the workflows portion. I did post just above Sarah's comment, the article that actually has all 3 steps laid out. So it'll show you kind of the full life cycle, what that workflow will look like. And one thing I did just want to reshare my screen on was if you are using the new listing workflow and the lifecycle workflow at the same time, there's one tweak that you'll want to make. And just to show you what the lifecycle workflow looks like, this is what that will look like, where you have your filter block with your age of inventory here. Nice. For 0 for 30 days. And then you do nest that following action over to the right side. That'll make sure the filter is properly applied. So this is what that full life cycle workflow will look like for you. One thing to note on the new listing workflow is this is actually the trigger for the workflow, but it won't only apply to newly imported listings. So if you have it set as this will apply to all of your listings in your account. Obviously, you don't want all of them to be set to that Maven strategy. So one thing you'll just want to do here is add in a strategy filter block and just select none. So this will only assign that starting strategy to listings that do not already have a strategy assigned. And then you can nest those following actions to the right side there. So I've had some folks where they're using both, and that new listing, when new listings are imported, that'll actually reassign all of your listings back to whatever strategy you select until that age of inventory workflow runs on the hour. So that subtle tweak will kind of just help keep everything organized for you there.
Okay, so you keep teaching me things about our workflows, man. I love it. Never thought about doing that. This makes me so pumped because I'm like, yeah, it makes total sense. Never thought about doing that, but all right. Love that. Awesome.
And then,
Go ahead. You're good.
No, I was just going to say, and then obviously there's other workarounds. If you have listings that you don't want included in workflows, you can create a specific strategy for them. You'll use that same strategy filter block and just exclude that strategy. So any listings assigned to those specific strategies won't be reassigned based on age of inventory. So always feel free to reach out to us if you have specific scenarios or things going on in your account, but you still want to try and automate as much as possible. I'll be happy to kind of rack my brain, try to find some sort of workaround or the best setup for you.
Nice. Sela Wayne, since adding Walmart, what have you all seen over the past month or two with their API and the data provided compared to Amazon, and general updates and thoughts about Walmart repricing nerd out session? So the data part, I'm glad you picked this out specifically because I think this is the biggest hindrance right now, and this is true for everyone. There's a lot of data not provided. That's just the reality of it. We're working with their team to add more support for things. We'll see how that goes. It's kind of out of our hands. We just keep prodding. We have noticed, though, that there are times when the data coming from the API is incorrect. We'll be super transparent. We've noticed this. We have support tickets open for this reason. We've seen this with some of our users where, anytime you see something that doesn't add up, please reach out to support. Let us know so we can take a look. Most of the time, we know exactly what's happening, and it's a strategy change issue or something like that that was not as apparent. But in some cases, what we look at in the raw data makes no sense. I'll just be honest. We have sent all that data over to Walmart's developer support. We have an open ticket. They let us know that the engineering team is looking deeper into it. So we will see. This is a hard thing, right? When you're building a software on top of another platform's data, necessarily you are bound by that data. And what I mean by that is whatever they are saying the data is what we have to say it is as well. Yes, I can look at the data and be like, that's actually incorrect. But at the end of the day, it's not our data. It's what they're saying. So there's going to be times, and we've seen this with Amazon too, to be fair. We have definitely seen this with Amazon. This is true for all large platforms. They're going to have data inconsistencies. They're going to have some issues. As long as they're working towards making those better, that's a good thing, in my opinion. But there are times when the data is just either out of date, not included, or incorrect. Even though logically I'm looking at it, I'm like, this makes no logical sense why it's set the way that it is. And I can look at everything publicly and be like, that's incorrect. They're aware of these things and are working through them. The upside is, at least for us, is that affects every developer. So it's not an Aura issue, it's just a platform issue. And we've had issues where this was years and years ago. I was still in college. I was walking into an exam, actually, funny enough, and got a message that all of pricing was down for Amazon. The API was down. In Seller Central was down, or it could do nothing. And everybody's like, how are you guys going to fix this? We're not. We can't. That's an Amazon issue. We have to wait for them to fix it. And then everything goes back to normal. So you're going to have these problems. It just comes with the territory. They're not fun. I will say that. They're your frustrations with the data gaps is also our frustrations. We're a very, very data driven company. And when we get false data, we're like, but it should be correct. Like we're slightly OCD about it. So that's been the biggest thing since we've launched that we've noticed. So it's kind of twofold. There's a lot of data that's just not supported via the API that we have to find workarounds for, which is obviously way more intensive to do, which we're going to work on. And number two, even the data we can get, there are cases where it's just not correct. But again, there's all we can really do in those cases is work with their support team, let them know, keep them in the loop, say, hey, we're going to open up a new ticket for this. Can you guys take a look? Have your engineering team on that API take a look and see what's going on. That's all we really can do, unfortunately, but we can keep doing it. So we're going to keep doing that. I actually sent a follow-up this morning. So, so not as fun of a nerd out session, but that's how it works. It's funny, Casey, I've said this before, when I was a seller, you deal with a lot of issues being a seller. And I was like, you know what? Aura's growing. I'm going to stop selling. I'm just going to be on the developer side. It's going to be so much easier. No, total different ballgame. It's just as crazy, just in a different way. So we're in this together.
Yeah. And I think on the positive side of things, there's a lot of similarities between Amazon and Walmart, just in terms of, they both have buy boxes. You can compete against both FBA, FBM sellers on Amazon. We're working on adding additional targeting on the Walmart side so you can compete with similar sellers. But one main difference that we found is how Walmart calculates their buy box winner and their algorithm for maintaining the buy box. Specifically right now, on Amazon, it's advantageous to raise your price when you become the buy box winner. Close the gap between you and that next highest offer, generate a little bit more margin for yourself without losing that buy box. If you do end up losing the buy box at a higher price point on Amazon, it's very quick and easy to regain the buy box. You just issue another price update, bring it back down. You can stay there. You're good to go. On Walmart, it is actually very different in how it functions. They have what we've been referring to as a wait in line buy box algorithm. So once you win the buy box, you actually keep that buy box unless one of three things happens. One, you run out of stock. Two, some other seller prices below you. Or three, you raise your price. The most common question I've seen for folks who already sell on Amazon and are now beginning to sell on Walmart is, why can't I raise my price when I become the buy box winner on Walmart? First, we don't provide that feature, but secondly, it's actually not advantageous to do that because of how their buy box operates. We've discussed a lot internally on different ways to try and maximize margins within that Walmart buy box, but until they change how it functions, there's not really any workarounds or kind of quick tips to maximize that. So in terms of best practices on Walmart, what we recommend is targeting that buy box and either matching that price or pricing slightly below that buy box winner. That's going to bring you the best results. And then secondly, one thing that we have noticed in terms of kind of a commonality or something that happens frequently to users is they'll see that their price in Aura is below their set min price for Walmart listings. So this happens in really two scenarios. One, Walmart's repricer is active and issuing pricing updates. Or two, there's what's called Walmart funded incentives or Walmart funded promotions. Those two actions are going to override Aura's pricing efforts. So if you look at the pricing activity, you'll see that Aura will have tried to issue the same update multiple times, but it's not going through. That's going to be the biggest indicator that either that Walmart repricer is active or you have a promo or incentive for that specific listing. I'll actually link once I finish my brief rant here in the chat. We have an article with their specific Walmart guides around these specific functions, how you can manage them. But essentially a Walmart funded promo allows Walmart to list you at a lower price than you're actually sending your price at, if that makes sense. And that allows a customer to buy it at a lower price, and they actually reimburse you the difference between your offer price and that actual sale price. So that's why that's showing below your min price, or is blind to outside price updates. And that's
very
why
confusing.
it looks like and Aura is blind to outside updates. So that's why it looks like it's not working properly. But always recommend checking. I believe it's in the pricing insights or the pricing incentives section in Seller Center. That's the quickest way to see, hey, is my listing enrolled here? Walmart will automatically enroll some listings for you. So you could obviously manage those manually. But I'll go ahead and link that specific article for you folks in the chat, just so you have access to it. But with Aura just being blind to outside price updates, that's why it looks like it's not quite processing or issuing pricing updates, but you'll just want to manage those settings in Seller Center there.
Yeah. And what's interesting about that is you can submit price updates and they will come back as successful, but your price won't change. Well, your price actually did change, but the way they display it shows that it didn't, but it did. And so there's some confusion with like how that works, what actually happened. We've tested this in seller accounts. We've tested this via the API. We know kind of how it works, but we also know that you're kind of flying blind, unfortunately. So we're looking at the incentive model to see if there's anything we could do that would be optimal. It's kind of difficult though, because, you know, the way I've explained this is let's say the gap is between $12 and $15. That's when you're included in the incentive, as an example. Anybody price within there will just show $12. But if you think about it logically, if Walmart is going to give me the delta, who are they going to prioritize? The seller they have to give the least to. So the one who's closest to $15, right? If you're at $14.99, they're only going to give you a penny, but still show you as $12. Okay, that's fine. Or I'm sorry, the inverse. I can't think today. The inverse of that. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? You get what I'm saying? You're picking up what I'm putting down. So because you can't see where your competition is, let's say there's 10 of us in that range, spread across the range itself, we don't really know where everybody else is at. And so the logical optimal decision is to be one penny, or basically to be a penny delta, because you have the highest likelihood of Walmart being like, cool, we have to pay you less. There we go. But it's not exactly what you want. So we're thinking through a lot of these things. It's kind of interesting. That's for sure. Let's see. Oh, one more thing for suppressed buy box. Should we go in and lower the minimum price, or does Aura/Maven automatically price below the minimum price showing for the listing? Casey, I'll let you handle that one.
Yeah, so in this scenario, Luane, there are both our rules-based and Maven strategy do have settings that will automatically try to unsuppress that buy box for you. In Maven, it's going to be just that advanced section. If you have that option checked, I forget the specific language there, but there's only one option. If you have that checked, then Maven will try to unsuppress the buy box. On our rules-based strategy, your strategy will have to be set to only targeting the buy box, and then it will show as custom, or under the pursuit section, it'll say if buy box is suppressed, you want that set to customize price, current price, minus 2 cents. Now, in both of those scenarios, what's going to happen is Aura is going to slowly drop your price incrementally until either that buy box is reactivated or until your minimum price is reached. If the buy box remains suppressed at your minimum price, you'll be held at your minimum price. And just due to how minimum prices work within Aura, that's considered a hard floor that Aura won't ever issue a pricing update below. So if you do reach that minimum price and the buy box is still suppressed, it won't lower your minimum price. You'll have to go in and actually lower that manually yourself. But if it does go down to that min price, buy box remains suppressed, then you'll be held there. If the buy box activates prior to that, then regular repricing will resume at that point.
Nice. Great questions today, by the way, everyone. And just a reminder, I know a lot of people joined kind of later. This is open office hours. There is no format here. We're just here to answer your questions, geek out with you guys. So if you have any questions, please throw them into the chat. We'd be happy to dive deep into every single one of those with the time we have. We got about 18 minutes or 17 minutes here.
And I'm sharing my screen a lot today, but I'll actually just share my screen one more time just to kind of illustrate what Luane's looking for there.
Awesome.
All right, so this is the pursuit section. In order to have that buy box unsuppression action work properly, you will have to have your competition type set to only buy box. And then just in the pursuit section, that's going to be this setting here. It is a little bit confusing in terms of how it works, but this is essentially what Aura will do. Just customize your price. You can use your min or max price, but we recommend using customized price. Yep. It'll start at your current price and then drop by 2 cents. So that'll kind of continue to drop until, like I said, that min price is reached or the buy box is reactivated. Some folks will choose to go to their max price and start bringing down from there, but if it becomes suppressed at your current price point, it's not going to be unsuppressed at a higher price point. That's why we recommend that current price option there. And much more simple in Maven. If you go to the Maven section and just advanced, if you have this option checked, then Aura is going to slowly drop that price for you, try to unsuppress that buy box.
Nice. See, Mike has a good question here. So strategy is basically for Walmart. So just for clarity, Maven does not currently support Walmart. It's a whole different ball game. So that's not something we could just port over, unfortunately. Like Casey was saying earlier in the conversation, the way the buy box rotates and stuff like that, the behaviors, the dynamics of those listings are very different than how they operate on Amazon. So a lot of the behaviors that Maven has simply would not work in the way that you would expect them to on Walmart. So that's kind of like you got to start from scratch, unfortunately. Right now, though, it's funny. It's so simplistic that when we get to talking with larger sellers, what they do, what they want, it just comes down to matching the buy box within a certain range. That's it. There are some interesting optimizations that can be done that we have considered. So one of the ones that came up was your out of stock listing price does affect your competitive price kind of level, which does affect your pro seller badge. So it does make sense when you're out of stock and have nothing inbound to go to the competitive price, even if you're never going to restock it. It helps your metrics. However, if you're out of stock but have inbound inventory, you don't necessarily want to do that. You're willing to take a short-term, decrease in that metric because you can come in at a higher price and possibly increase your margin. So there's some interesting nuances there that we are looking at. But in terms of like the foundations of repricing and behaviors and stuff, pretty much everybody's just matching the price right now, which is so interesting. We've talked to a number of sellers before we even started to build this, and we're like, hey, easy button, you get to hit it. We build whatever you want. What do you want? Everybody said, just match the buy box, please. So funny. Will that evolve and change over time? It certainly will. We're like the thing I just mentioned, we're finding these subtle nuances that may not necessarily help with profit margin and sales directly, but it could help protect things like your pro seller badge. So there's a lot of these things we're kind of looking into. We're seeing how impactful those things are, if they're worth building or not, and kind of going from there. So right now, the Walmart side of repricing is very simplistic relative to what you're used to on Amazon. So if you're used to selling on Amazon and you have like these complicated strategies and stuff, and you go to Walmart and you're like, why can't I do that? It's because most of the time they don't work, right? Like Casey was saying, this wait in line concept for the buy box. Yeah, you could raise your price. Sure, we can do that all day, but is it going to give you the outcome that you wanted from doing that action? No. So there's a lot more of those behavioral things that you have to kind of study and understand. And there's some things that, pretty simple, they don't work. So can you do it? Yeah. Is it going to work for you? No. So why waste the effort? There's things that could actually hinder your performance in doing so on Walmart that would increase your performance on Amazon. So these are a lot of things you need to kind of keep in mind.
Yeah. And kind of building off of what Dylan just said, I'll just share my screen again one more time. We'll kind of keep doing this as long as it's applicable. But for Walmart strategies, like we mentioned right now, what you'll want to do for Walmart, currently only targeting the buy box is available, mentioned due to restrictions with data we receive and things like that. But this is also just best practice. So that'll be pre-selected for you. In the pursuit section, price below by 2 cents, or you can just match that price like Dylan mentioned. Currently, buy boxes don't become suppressed on Walmart, so you can actually just ignore that setting here. But building off of what he was saying in terms of restocking, whether you're going to restock or not, if you are planning on restocking, it's advantageous to raise your price when out of stock. If you're not planning on replenishing, it's better to just stay at a competitive price. So what you'll want to do for that setting, and what I recommend, is having 2 specific Walmart strategies. One for listings you plan on replenishing, one for listings that you don't. And the only change you'll really make is this lower section here for how to price when you're out of stock. If you do plan on replenishing that item, you'll want to use max price here. If you don't plan on replenishing, you can just flip this to do nothing, and that will hold you at whatever price you had when you go out of stock. So if you were matching that buy box price at the time, it'll keep you at that specific price. So that'll kind of lead to, best practices, best results for those 2 scenarios. And that's why we typically recommend just having one for each type of listing with that subtle difference there.
Nice. And we'll do this last question here because I think this is a good one from Mike. What does the pro seller badge basically provide you as a seller? A lot of things. So it's you can't really relate it to Prime. It's not quite the same thing. Like this is more like account level versus listing level. So I pulled up a bunch of stuff here. So one, you get priority in search results. So like by de facto, you're getting more conversion. So that can help with sales. Sellix did a study and found that sellers who achieved pro seller status saw an average revenue increase of 68% within the first 90 days, even with minimal changes to listings or advertising. So it helps a lot, right? It is similar enough in the sense of like, okay, well, if I'm a buyer and I'm on Amazon and I see a prime offer versus a non-prime offer, I'm going to prefer the prime offer for speed. So naturally you get a higher conversion rate. It's similar in the kind of outcome there. So you're getting stuff like that. You're getting faster payouts. So more access to your cash flow, things like that, referral discounts. You basically, you want it. You want to not lose that, to be honest. There's a lot to, and the criteria for pro seller status, I forget off the top of my head. If you Google it or go to Perplexity and say, hey, what's the criteria for being a pro seller on Walmart, it will tell you exactly what those things are. They're looking at a few different things like the pricing competitive, inventory stuff. I forget the exact things. It's been a few weeks since I've looked at it. But it's out there. It's very clear if you qualify or not and what to aim for. But it's definitely worth having, right? Definitely worth having. So cool. I think we will end it there for this week. Again, we do this every Wednesday from 2 to 3 p.m. EST. There is no format. We just jump in, answer your questions. We might share some news, geek out on some different topics. But fundamentally, we're just here to answer your questions and make sure it's a good use of your time once a week. So with that, we will let you get back to the rest of your week and enjoy it.
Yeah, just one reminder as well. We are out of the office Friday in observance of Juneteenth Thursday. So there's a reminder going out later this afternoon. But any support tickets that come in, we'll handle you as first come, first serve Monday morning. We'll still be monitoring, critical systems, make sure everything's repricing properly. But outside of that, folks, have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you next week.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Adios.